Yeah. So that's what's going on. But Raylan and Rachel are in Harlan looking for Danny. They come to Mike's house. They see, they have a confrontation with Wendy at Mike's house. She tells him to go talk to Mike at his store. They go to the store, and Raylan decides not to violate the Fourth Amendment, which is great. It was very close, very close to faking an exigent circumstances Fourth Amendment thing. And breaking into the house, but decided not to. Goes to the hardware store, talks to Mike about the rental. We talked about where that kind of goes already, and ultimately Raylan tells him, "Hey, tell him you're not going to do that anymore," and finds out at the same time that the hunting cabin is included in that, and so they go to investigate the hunting cabin eventually. So.
He pretty much gave Wendy carte blanche.
Yeah. He gave her whatever she wanted, right? And like he fell for kind of the she's got a kid, no money, and blah 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 thing, But it helps that she's pretty, that's for sure.
Yeah,
the superpower. And so Raylan leans on Mike to tell them they can't do that anymore. And then goes to the hunting cabin where he finds Danny holding Carl hostage. And we get what I think is one of the best moments of this episode when Raylan and Rachel literally bust Danny Crow's face, bust into the cabin and have a conversation about what is transpiring, because Carl is tied to a chair. He's clearly been beaten up. There's a knife on the floor, and Raylan and Rachel think, this kidnapping. And Carl corrects him on that.
You didn't tell me we was expecting gas. I would have cleaned up.
Deputy, the girl give him a message. Say it's just not a good time, though.
Well, let's make it a good time.
Chelsea, stick him! Stick him, Chelsea!
Just so you know, it comes to it. First one takes a bullet is this dog.
Chelsea! Quiet!
Besides, beef for kidnapping, it gotta be better than dying up here in this cabin.
Now, who said anything about kidnapping?
Excuse me?
Suppose he never kidnapped me, huh? Suppose I'm here of my own volition.
Being that you're beat up and tied to a chair?
Well, Danny and I here, we never did settle on a safe word, did we?
Yeah. We share some things in common.
I don't believe we've met. I'm Carl, and you're Raylan, right? We have a friend in common.
Boyd Crowder.
A little embarrassing. You happen upon us in such a state, but seeing as how there's no criminally unbecoming activity currently going on, we'll say Danny here cuts me loose and we all just go on our way, huh?
Meaning, you go loose, then you go back to Boyd, and the two of you settle up with Danny at your leisure. Something like that?
Well, I'm not a fortune teller, so who can tell what the future holds?
Now look at that. I think we may have come up with a peaceful resolution.
Yeah, we have. Real peaceful.
I love this scene because as Carl is telling his little story about, we never did agree on a safe word, and, it's not really kidnapping because I'm here, my own volition. Raylan starts to crack a smile in the background. And at first I thought it's because he finds it amusing that these guys are quote unquote admitting to whatever weird sexual proclivities they have in order to avoid the kidnapping beef. But then I realized he's actually grinning because this is going exactly the way he wants it to, because he's going to let Boyd and Daryl kill each other.
Yeah.
And so he's like, this is fine. This works out exactly the way I want. So that's where his grin comes from, I think. But,
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I just had a note here that since you were talking about like we were talking about the new series, I think that if it's 10 years later, Raylan probably would have shot the dog, like just right off the bat, you know?
I think he would have been,
instead of,
yeah, I think he would have been within his rights to do it.
Yeah.
I think he would have been within his rights to haul in Danny for attempted aggravated assault at the very least, for saying sick him, Chelsea, sick him. I think that would probably qualify. So it's, yeah. So you're absolutely right. Yeah. I don't think, they don't ever show dogs or kids being killed on TV. So that's part of the reason I think that probably didn't happen. Plus they also need the storyline later.
Yeah, that's right.
So
that's right.
But yeah, I think you're totally right about that. So Carl gets released to pursue his revenge, much to Raylan's pleasure. And while all that's going on, Ava in prison is being nearly sexually assaulted by black lesbians. And there's our Kentucky Fried Wisdom moment of the week.
Say, boy, you cover about as much as a flapper's skirt in a high wind. Pay attention, boy. Look at me when I'm talking to you, son. Look, sister, is any of this filtering through that little blue bonnet of yours? Pay attention, son. Look at me when I'm talking to you.
There's a moment where they're talking. This black lesbian prison gang is talking about Ava and how attractive Ava is, because everybody finds Ava attractive, much to Ava's chagrin. Yeah. And she says, "I say we're all the same color where it matters," which strikes me as the polite version of "it's all pink on the inside."
Yeah.
And given the way she looks at Ava like a piece of meat, that's what she really wanted to say. So the network television Kentucky Fried Wisdom version of "it's all pink on the inside." I thought that was pretty amusing. So yeah, the Aryans then step in to protect her, or at least she thinks to protect her, because what happens is they stop the current assault and then start their own. They kick her ass and chop her hair as a lesson to Boyd, because Boyd's a race traitor, because he was a white supremacist neo-Nazi, and now he's less of a white supremacist neo-Nazi because he's not as active in the movement, I guess.
Well, yeah, I thought it was because he let...
Oh, yeah, he let black people into his church.
Into
That's
his
right,
church.
I forgot about that, too.
Yeah.
And so they're not super happy with Boyd. Gunner betrayed him, and Gunner's sister is apparently a very devoted member of the cause. So she kicks Ava's ass, chops her hair, and makes clear that it's going to continue to happen. And and Boyd wants to go and see if he can, fix this double cross situation with Gunner, but we find out from Jimmy that he's holed up with like half a dozen Nazis. So there's not much they can do at this point because they're a little bit outgunned, especially with Carl being MIA. They don't know where Carl is at this point. They think he's, because of a very sitcom-y sort of cell phone reception issue, they think he's somewhere he's not supposed to be. And Boyd gets angry.
You know what? That's true. I mean, do you, I don't know. Like, I can't even think of the last time I had a really like weird like cell reception issue. But then again, maybe it depends on, like what part of country you're at or whatever.
I have no doubt that if you're up in the mountains of Harlan County, you get a little bit spotty cell coverage, especially in 2014. But at the same time, it's definitely plot contrivance, very convenient, sort of thing. And it's unnecessary. It's actually entirely unnecessary to the plot too. It almost feels like filler. They didn't need to do that.
Yeah.
Because it doesn't actually affect anything. It just makes Boyd angry with Carl, but that's all. So, what happens after that? Because Raylan and Rachel raid the cabin, and Dewey was up there with Danny. Dewey runs away when he sees them come to raid the cabin and gets lost in the woods again. We hear from him later, and he says, "Yeah, I got lost in the woods. I was coming to warn you." So I thought that was pretty funny. I also wanted to mention that Gen Pop in the Kentucky women's prison is apparently just like Cool Hand Luke, because they just had this one open area with bunk beds. It's very much like Cool Hand Luke. It was very strange. Certainly not, I don't think, what a prison looks like in most circumstances, right? I've heard of those scenarios where they have the beds out in kind of the common area, and that's for overcrowding and things like that because they don't have enough cells.
That's what I've heard too. Yeah.
But that didn't seem to be the case here, because they walked past the tiers and into Gen Pop. So I don't know. I don't know what that was all about. Well, actually, I suspect I know what it was about, which is that it's easier to shoot and easier to write when you're not isolated in a cell. So it's more interesting camera work. It's more interesting plot capabilities. Because if you're in a cell and you have a toilet in your cell, you no longer have a group bathroom to go to, which is what 3/4 of the remaining prison episodes revolve around. So so I assume that's what's going on there. But so Boyd decides to take Carl and Jimmy, and they go to confront the crows. But Boyd's not there to hurt them. Boyd's there to recruit them, because he says, "Hey, I need some muscle, and I've got a way for you to earn some money." And so he proposes to Daryl Crowe that they go and get Gunner. And so Boyd shows up to Gunner's and asks for a refund. And Gunner threatens him right up until Daryl and Danny and the rest of the crows come in and hold the rest of the Nazis at gunpoint. And Daryl, as a very large man, beats Gunner to a pulp. And Boyd tells Gunner to relay the message that any further harm to Ava is going to be returned to Gunner times 100. So,
and I think he got his money back too.
Yes, he did. He told somebody, I can't remember if it was Daryl or Danny, to get his money too. Yeah, he got his money back also. So that's the Boyd attempting to get Ava protection in prison story. Right after that happens, Ava borrows her bunkmate's shiv and uses it to cut her hair to a sassy bob in the bathroom. Again, we're using this communal bathroom as a staging area for half of the plot in prison. So, just cuts her hair to a sassy bob, and we'll see what happens to her. Boyd's also got a second kind of parallel track that he's going here, because he is attempting to get a deal in place with the Mexican cartel to import some heroin. And there's a meeting that happens with Wynn and Boyd and Picker and the cartel members earlier in the episode. And I have a clip of that, and we'll talk a little bit about it.
Wynn Duffy, Boyd Crowder, this is Alberto Ruiz.
And you must be Mr. Yoon.
And how do you know that? Oh, the one wonton among the tortillas?
I would have said kimchi and the salsa.
That's good. See, the Hannigan were slaves from Korea brought over to Mexico to work in plantations.
I know. I've read a lot of books about slavery.
He's a history buff.
And some people think that I'll be offended if you point out the incongruity.
Well, I assume you want it pointed out.
And why would I want that?
Because it suggests you're very good at what you do.
I think Mr. Picker told you we require payment up front.
He did, but we were hoping to come to a different understanding.
The hell is this, Boyd? I gave these guys
We've
my
had
word.
some bad experiences lately with the pay up front business model.
Well, fortunately, the people I represent rely on me precisely because they know I'm not like them. I dislike beheadings, gentlemen.
So do we.
It's bad for business. And the fact is, money in that bag would only buy you insurance against my employee.